Welcome to my show. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to touch base here. We'll touch base on the music industry. Touching base on Jesus and everything. Everyone knows the Catholic Church and Christianity and the way that music is within the Catholic Church and within Christian rock music and whatever it be. It's the situation taking place today within what's going on with Diddy, within the rap industry, hip-hop, and the music industry as a whole, and what's taking place in Hollywood. And this is the fall of Babylon, and then people know of all of the people that were whacked in the music scene and in Hollywood for attempting to speak the truth of everything. And that goes along with the same as the Christians back in the day, or the Nordics or the pagans or whoever, God's children, the demons coming along and killing God's children for speaking the truth, and it goes all the way down the line into today. But specifically within the music industry of what's taking place today, they manipulated the music industry to manipulate the people and keep them away from organic, cultural, ancestral music. Because if you look at Native Americans, you look at African, you look at Nordic, and you look at ancient music and how everything used to be compared to today, and just the past 3 generations of music. We didn't like Christian rock music. We didn't like that stuff. We listened to punk. We listened to heavy metal music. We listened to rap music. We listened to hip hop. There's a line of Grateful Dead and so forth, a mixture of everything. But the one thing that the people didn't, or the one thing they did not want, was everyone coming together under one type of music, where it didn't matter what color of your skin was. And that's the part of, you going back into, into tribal music. You go back into, it doesn't matter as long as the music's good. But our First Nation, tribal, whatever it be, But the manipulation of the people today of creating certain types of music after, once the, you get into the 60s and the 70s, and people know of the manipulation of rock music, and some was organic and some wasn't. And then you have, Motown and blues and jazz and stuff like that. But the transition of music and the suppression of that type of music, of Motown and blues and jazz in a certain way, and when rock music really became something, heavy metal music and hair band music into the 80s, because you had your hippie music, but your hippie music being half hijacked. So your hippie music being half hijacked and so forth. But getting into the 80s, you had, the transition from Motown, blues, jazz into hip-hop and rap, out of the suppression of the black people, the inner city, after the riots and the destruction of the black middle class, like Detroit and Compton and Harlem, just an example. You look at these places now, but the transition of what the music in the 80s of hip-hop music, organic, of the breakdancing and everything like that, coming out of being suppressed, late 70s and the 80s, and then having the white people dressing up as weird hairband, a lot of hairspray and makeup, and the hairband era, where it's just like you look queer, you look weird, and people thought that it was just all cool and stuff. People wish that never existed. So when you're looking at music and you're looking at stuff that is organic over what is created to manipulate the people, this is what was created to manipulate the people. And so, but you get into the 80s and the heavy metal music, and the majority, white people listening to heavy metal music and black people listening to hip hop. You were not allowed to listen to other cultures' music. You had reggae, but that was the killing of Bob Marley, where they ended the hippie movement. They didn't, like the Grateful Dead was still there, but there was a new generation starting, and they needed to control the new generation and keep them separated by controlling the music and saying you're not allowed to go listen to rap music and you're not allowed to go listen to heavy metal music. But if you look at the situation and what heavy metal music did, mosh pits and stuff like that, with Slayer and Metallica and so forth, there's the inner city people listening to hip hop weren't beating each other up in a mosh pit in the 80s and into the 90s. But there was the transition. You look into the hip hop stuff, and how it used to be organic, and it came from the streets, and they were rapping about the streets. But see, the problem with this is all about Ascension. This is all about Jesus and culture stuff and music, and because if you hijack the music, you hijack the culture, and the people don't know who they are. So the crossing of cultures in the different music, and that's where there was a line where, like, I grew up breakdancing in the 80s, and I listened to hip hop, and a couple of the generation older than me listening to the hairband music, they did not go breakdance. They didn't listen to hip hop. So, because they were too cool. They weren't, so we were transitioning into that free spirit of listening to rap, rock, reggae, Grateful Dead, everything into one. And that's where Sublime came into play. But as you see what happened in the 90s, Sublime being shut down, that type of music was shut down. And then grunge was created. And grunge was to follow, you know, for the most part, you know, some of it was organic. You know, you look at Tool and certain bands, but, you know, then you look at Pearl Jam and their Hijack. But if it was organic hip hop, it would have been a rising of the black people in an organic way, of being free, of dancing like the Mayans. But it was suppressed and it was turned into gangster rap. And then because it was an East Coast thing, rap was an East Coast thing. It was only New York, only Philly. And if you did not grow up in these areas and specific timelines, you're not in this culture. And we, as a whole, can't ascend without all cultures and all roots to the tree. So you wonder why it's the black people who are suppressed in the inner cities. People today is new agers, new age spiritual people don't look at, or they can't see the inner city. Most likely don't have any black light worker friends due to what has come into the DNA and the manipulation of the people. But it's all people today. If you look at Native Americans and you look at white people, you know, across the board, you know, it's everywhere. But the culture and everything that's going on with the rap industry today, you know, it has to crumble, it has to come out. And there's no hiding anything, because even though one didn't grow up in the industry, did not listen to rap music, they were pulled down, we will say. I like to use this, you know, if you did not grow up in the city lifestyle, you ended up listening to rap music and listening to pop music because it was pushed on you. Because they manipulated the music, and they would only give you the people they wanted to give you, you know, be famous. Same celebrities, you know, look at Beyonce and Taylor Swift, it's the same people. It's the ones, it's the demonic ones, and this whole thing, this twist of what was once satanic and heavy metal in the 80s, you know, and somewhat into the 90s, and then in the 90s transitioning into the rap music, the rap industry, hijacking that. And, you know, and that's the crazy thing, which is what it is. And a lot of people can't see that, and that's a whole other manipulation, because even like when they created Eminem, like this whole thing was planned for generations of to bring down the white people from the suburbs, or pull them out of rock music and into hip hop. Because if you go, you go back in the day, I lived in the city, and then I moved up into the mountains in 8th grade, and the white people in the mountains did not listen to rap music. So there's a cultural shift there that people can't see spiritually, where the people in the inner city are the ones, you know, invisible bars, invisible spiritual bars, but also the people in the mountains who, you know, who don't live in the inner city and don't pay attention and are trying to ascend and say that they're light workers and starseeds. It doesn't work that way. You can't ignore the inner city and try to ascend. So, but the way that they did it was, they created Eminem and brought in a whole culture through manipulating hip hop in their way, instead of it being mixed up organically through Sublime or Beastie Boys or whoever else, who would come on to the scene being organic. They put ones on pedestals, and then they shut down the organic ones. Like, now we can see what happened with Lauryn Hill being shut down, and and Old Dirty Bastard, and Tupac, Biggie, and the whole entire thing. It all depends if someone's really looking at the situation. But it comes down into the tribal thing. It comes down into why they did it. Why did they shut down the music industry? Why did they hijack it? And now they're just feeding the same thing, the same thing over and over to the people. Same thing. And they're trying to take Beyonce and put her in the country music and manipulate country music. But they do it across the board. They've been doing it. Like, heavy metal music came from Nordic music, banging on rocks, all of it, all of it. Everything is tribal. But today, with people not knowing where they came from, they're manipulated into gangsters and, certain lifestyles, and it's follow the leader, so people need to learn how to return back to how it once was, through the organic music, the organic frequencies, music that resonates with Mother Earth, music that speaks the truth, because that's what it is. You gotta have truth in your music, and that's what hip hop was. That's what Bob Marley was, and that's what reggae is. And that's part of what, we look at reggae today. They've been suppressing reggae all these years too. You have reggae out there, but it's only in certain areas. Like, you're not going to have a reggae channel in the mountains, or Philadelphia, New York, or Carolinas. Yeah, you may have it in California, maybe in Florida, but they're not going to have mainstream reggae, because they don't want and they can't have that music. But now is the time. See, this is what they don't, people don't get about Jah. It's what people don't get. It's like, who was Bob Marley? Who are the Jamaicans? Who are the Israelites? Who are the tribes? We're all part of the tribe. Who was Jesus? What tribe did he come from? What festival would he be at? He'd be at a Reggae festival, a reggae festival. Spinning Pleiadian records, Pleiadian turntable. But it's all about culture, and that's what people don't have. You got to follow the music and see what they did to the music, because the music is people's path. Music is people's frequency. So whatever music you're listening to is your identity. Not 100%. I'm not gonna. People go back and forth, and that's the part of these generations today. We will listen to everything. That's part of what we already know. For the most part of what has taken place, we can see, but we got to return back to the roots anyway. Return back to Mother Earth. Return back to Gaia. And we just watched Babylon burn. Because I guess, Babylon had a music scene. So. Tupac. Have a good day.